in our lesson, we talked about what faith was about. And of course, we went to the passage in the Bible, Hebrews, the 11th chapter, verse 1, where faith is defined by God himself. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And in that lesson, it was very, very focused on the understanding that faith is not about something without proof, and it's not just about wishful thinking. That faith is based in knowledge that comes from God, it's based in facts, it's based in truth. God has always expected us to have a reason for believing in him. But faith is about more than just facts. And that's what I want to do this morning, is talk about that. And to do that, I want to go back to the story that David read a little bit earlier concerning Jesus and the healing of these two people. We're told in the story that Jesus had been crossing over the sea, and a great crowd had gathered about him, and he was there. A man named Jairus came up to see him, and he fell on his feet. We're told this man was a ruler of the synagogue, which means that he was a person who knew about God, and he understood about God's word, and he was a leader of the people. And this ruler of the synagogue falls down at the feet of Jesus and says, "My daughter, my little daughter," you can hear the affection, can't you? "My little daughter," we're going to learn a little bit later, she's 12 years old. "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So we have this 12-year-old little girl and her parents. What do you think the parents had been through? Any of us who have children know what a struggle this can be, that the parents had tried all the means possible to help their daughter. They'd probably gone to the doctors that could be gone to, and they tried everything, and they'd spent their money. And without a doubt, they had been praying. They had spent nights up praying. They had lost sleep. They had lost time. Things that maybe they thought needed to be done weren't getting done because they were trying to take care of the daughter that they loved so much. And now this daughter is laying at the point of death in spite of all the things that they had done. So with a sense of desperation and perhaps even frustration because nothing was happening, the last place they turned is to Jesus. He implored him earnestly. Why did he come to Jesus? Why did he plead? What was his hope? There was something he knew about Jesus. Maybe he didn't understand everything about him, but people had been talking about Jesus. If you go back just in the book of Mark, in the chapters that are prior to this, you can see that Jesus had been very busy healing people. In the first chapter, you can read that he had healed a man who had an unclean spirit. And this had happened in a synagogue. And it says his fame spread. Well, that, no doubt, someone who can heal someone who's possessed by an evil spirit, that's going to spread. And it happened, I know we shouldn't say this, it happened in synagogue, it happened in church, right? And the fame spreads. And that night, it says the whole town gathered around the house where he was at. And he spent the whole night healing the people who were sick. It continues a little bit later in the first chapter and says that a man who was a leper came to him and asked for healing and moved with pity. Jesus healed him. He healed a man who was a paralytic. And remember, he healed that man. Jesus was in a house that was full of people, so crowded that these people who were carrying the paralytic on a stretcher couldn't get in. Remember what they did? They went through the roof, lowered him down through the roof. And it says, Jesus, seeing their faith, healed that man. There's more to the story, but you get my point. In the 3rd chapter, you can read how there was a man with a withered hand in the synagogue. Jesus healed him. He healed a man with a demon in the 5th chapter, verse 13, the very one that we're at. Jesus, he knew, was a man who could do incredible things. I don't know what all he understood about Jesus, but the stories were out there. He had heard these things from his own people. Jesus was this man's hope for a cure when there was no other hope, when he had nowhere else to turn, and his little daughter was dying. And so Jesus agrees to that, and he's going to go there. But as he's going, it says that the crowds followed him and they thronged about him. Most of you have been in a crowd, right? At some point in your life, you've been in a crowd. You know what it's like with the jostling, inappropriate people getting in my space kind of thing. You know, people are bumping into each other all the time in a crowd, right? We're introduced to this woman. This is a woman who, we're told, has had a discharge of blood for 12 years. So many questions, but I don't know what all is going on. But for 12 years, her blood is flowing. And it says of her that she had suffered much under many physicians. I get the picture of like the Civil War doctors, you know, who are using hacksaws and things like that, and these incredible, you know, things that people thought were cures back then. She suffered much, but why was she suffering? Well, she was going to doctors, and the doctor said, well, I think this will work, this will heal you, or this will heal you, or do this. But instead of it getting better, it kept getting worse. Can you imagine the despair that she would feel? So we're told in verse 27 that she hears reports about Jesus. So she comes up behind him in the crowd and she touches his garment. Why? For her, Jesus is the only hope that she has for being healed. She's tried for 12 years for the doctors to do something, to make it right, to get it better. And for 12 years, it's only gotten worse and worse and worse for her. She said, if I touch his garments, I can be made well. Where'd that idea come from? Don't know, and that's not the point. If I can just touch his garments, I'll be made well. And she did. She touched it. And it stopped. She felt at that moment that her disease was healed. That's incredible. And Jesus, perceiving that the power got out of him, it says, who touched my garments? The disciples react clearly as anyone would. We're in a crowd, Jesus. You know, people are bumping into you all the time. What do you mean someone touched you? And so he starts looking around, and the woman knows what's happened. And she comes to him, says she's in fear and trembling. She falls down before him and she tells him the full truth. And he says, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. Do you see her faith? Like Jesus did? The faith that said, I've tried this for 12 years, I've suffered this, it's only gotten worse. My only hope is to touch the garment. And it worked. Do you see her faith? While he's talking to this woman, someone came from the ruler of the synagogue's house and said, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher anymore? And Jesus looked at that man and said, do not fear, only believe. Do not fear, only believe. This is the greatest challenge to our faith, is fear. Can you imagine the heartbreak of this father? He's on his last legs as far as that's concerned. for getting his daughter healed. And now that's been interrupted by some other woman getting healed also. Maybe if Jesus had just kept going, my daughter wouldn't be dead. Can you imagine the brokenheartedness of this father hearing those words? Because what we all know is that when you're physically dead, you stay physically dead. It's not curable. All the hope that he had, now he's replaced with that fear. Because fear focuses on what's impossible in our eyes and what's impossible in our experiences. Belief requires that I trust. That I trust even when it doesn't make sense. Because we know about the one that we trust in. The one who has the power to help us. The one who has the compassion that he wants to help us. To me, this is why reading the scriptures is so important. If we don't read what God's word has been given to us, we can't know about this God. We can't see how powerful he is. We can't see the compassion that he has for us. We can't see how faithful he is to us unless we take time to read everything in this book and strive to understand it. We need to read this. For Jairus, what he knew was what he had heard about all the healings. Do not fear, only believe. Jesus is saying to him, you can depend on me. I don't think that was easy for the ruler, do you? But they go on, and they get to the house. And they get to the house, and it's a big commotion, as you would expect. It was a 12-year-old girl that was just died. And all the people are weeping and moaning. And Jesus says, you can just hear the calmness of Jesus. Why are you making a commotion? Why are you weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping. What's their reaction? My translation says, and they laughed at him. The one that David read earlier said they ridiculed him, but we know that that's how it works. Jesus made everyone leave. As much as fear can overcome faith and hope, so can ridicule and laughing. How hard it must have been for Jairus and his wife at this point that those people who have faith are sometimes scorned by those who think they know better. That they're ridiculed by those who think that it's ridiculous for us to believe in the one that we believe in. What makes your God so special? Where is the power? Where is the help? We don't see it. What makes you think this guy can heal death? And so when he says she's just sleeping, they just laugh him off. It's so hard to keep faith, isn't it? When those who are around us are pushing us away. Jesus takes the little girl by the hand, says, Talitha Kumi, which means little girl, I say to you, arise. And that little girl gets up. She got up and began walking. And it says, they were immediately overcome with amazement. And then he tells them not to tell anyone. That's an interesting expression, isn't it? They were immediately overcome with amazement. Why? I mean, wasn't the whole point of Jairus going to get Jesus? so that his daughter would live? Why would they be amazed? Did they really believe? Be careful how you answer that. Did they really have hope? My answer is yes. They did. If he did not believe in God, if he did not hope in God, he would not have gone and sought Jesus to bring him back to heal the daughter. But this was more than they expected. This was greater than what they thought could happen. Don't you think that's true for the woman who was bleeding also? They were immediately overcome with amazement because however much we trust God and however much we have faith, our God does more than we expect. Because when we believe and we have hope, we have his love. Faith, hope, and love. Greatest of these is love. To me, this passage teaches us a lot about what faith really is, doesn't it? I'm just going to make 4 simple points. And they've kind of been running throughout the lesson, so nothing startling here, just to make it clear. Faith hopes in God. They had tried all the usual solutions. They've gone to the doctors, they've spent the money. And the thing about that is, it's easy in those cases to despair. To just give up. Because nothing's really working. That's when we have to look beyond the norm. And I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do. I'm just saying we have to look beyond the norm. A ruler of the synagogue. We know how the rulers of the synagogue generally treated Jesus. A ruler of the synagogue sought Jesus' help. He went beyond what others of them would have done because there was something that he needed so badly. We're all going to die. What's your hope then? And isn't that the question people in our society, in our world, ask all the time? And especially as we get older. What's going to happen to me after I die? What is your hope? Turn with me to 1 Peter, first chapter. 1 Peter, the first chapter, and in verse 3. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. According to his great mercy, he has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, kept in heaven for you, who by God's power are being guarded through faith for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you rejoice. And it goes on to talk about that rejoicing. But let me tell you what Jesus offers. Because we know that Jesus died, but that Jesus was raised from the dead, he offers us a living hope. Because he was raised, we can hope to be raised. All of us have an incurable disease. Sin. All of us are going to die. All of us have fallen short of the glory of God. What's your hope after you die? Jesus says, here's living hope. And that living hope, he describes in beautiful terms. Imperishable, undefiled, unfading, kept in heaven. We are guarded by God's power for a salvation ready to be revealed. Living hope. Not wishful thinking. Not guesswork. Not just going what most of the people say. This is a living hope. Because Jesus was raised, I can be raised. The same power that raised him can raise me. Faith hopes in God. Second point I want to make is that Hope seeks God. And this follows on the hope, doesn't it? Right? Jairus sought help from Jesus when all else had failed, and they were desperate. He hoped for the salvation, but he also went to go find him. And the woman who sought help from Jesus, everything had failed for her too. Things were not just failed, but things were getting worse. What did she do? She went out to seek Jesus, touching his garment anyway. It's sad, but it's true, that sometimes we don't really seek God until things become difficult and unbearable. That's kind of sad, but it's the way things work, and it's okay. When your life gets to that point, hope in him, and then seek him. Because, again, we all have that same disease that we cannot cure, that's sin. Men in the world have looked and looked for ways to save ourselves. We've all tried to find some way that we can say that life has come to me, but we've all failed miserably. We all have the burden of guilt, the sorrow for the things that we've done. So seek Jesus. Why should you seek Jesus? This story tells us, doesn't it? He's the one who loves you. He has compassion for you. Not only does he love you, but he also has the power and the plan to save you. That involved his death for us. But by his power and his plan, you can be saved. He's the one who sacrificed himself so that you can be saved. Why would you not seek him when he's the only way to be saved? Faith holds nothing back. Jairus, ruler of the synagogue. I'm still amazed. There's a part of my mind that says, of all the people to approach Jesus, ruler of the synagogue is a guy who would have a hard time doing that. Ruler of the synagogue doesn't just plead. It says that he fell at his feet and he implored him earnestly. Jairus let no pride keep him back from going to Jesus. There was no part of him that said, well, I'm the ruler of the synagogue. I'm this guy. Why should I go to him? I believe in God, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't do that. He held nothing back. He came and fell at his knees and implored him. What about the woman? I'm impressed by the woman. I don't know where the idea comes from. I can touch his garment and I can be healed. But when she comes to him, she didn't let any fear stop her. And when Jesus pointed her out, she didn't hold herself back from him. She came to him with fear and trembling. That didn't stop her. She fell down before him also, and she did what? Told him the whole truth. She let everything out. She didn't hold back. Brethren, sometimes I think when we talk about faith and our relationship with God, it's easy for us to say that faith hopes in God and faith seeks God. That's all really normal. But we forget this part. Faith doesn't hold things back from God. He wants me. He wants me to be in a relationship with him. So humble yourself. Come before him being truthful about your situation and your life. And maybe it's ugly. And maybe it's not what it should be, and you know that. But come before him. And because he loves you, he'll heal you. Fourth and final point. Love pleases God. Sorry, faith pleases God. Love pleases God too. Faith pleases God is the point of our lesson. Faith pleases God. And isn't that exactly what we see in the story? Because Jairus had faith, he hoped in Jesus, he sought Jesus, he held nothing back. What did Jesus do? He healed the daughter. And depending on how you read the story, may have raised his daughter from the dead. The woman, did her faith please God? Without a doubt. Your faith is saved. Your faith pleases Him. God wants to help you. So the words that I want to share with you about faith this morning is not just about knowing the facts. It's about all these things. Jesus said to Jairus when he was at his very lowest, do not fear, only believe. That only believe is big. It's really huge. Believe in Him. Hope Him, seek Him, don't hold back. Come to Him, and you'll find the help that you need. The help that all of us need. The salvation. The sins that we've committed. The illness that befalls us all. If you're ready today, because you believe in Him, and you're ready to repent of those sins, you can be baptized, those sins will be washed away. Will you do that today? Will you come forward and stand and sing?
Oh, do not let the word depart, and